Welcome back to the Barrel Talk Podcast. We are back with another episode of Let's Talk About It. It's been a while, fresh off vacation, but NBA world is continuing to go. Playoff basketball is basically almost all the way through the first round, so got a couple series going on. Got a couple early eliminations with some sweeps, but there's a lot to talk about, a lot to unpack. It's probably going to be a longer episode than usual, but we got a lot to get to. But before we get into that, for those that are interested in our NFL content here at Barrel Talk, our draft analysis or draft breakdown episode will be dropping on Thursday. For those interested in that, keep a lookout out for that on Thursday. But without further ado, we have a lot to unpack. Let's get right into it. Starting off with what happened last night, LA Lakers go down in 5 games to the Denver Nuggets. And really looking at this is like the most competitive 5-game series and sweep last year between these two teams that I've ever seen watching playoff basketball. Like it's really, you'll see Lakers fans on Twitter be like, "Oh, this is the most competitive series," and everything else. I agree. Like, I wanted the Lakers to win, not because I'm a Lakers fan, but because I wanted to see another Denver Lakers Game 6 in LA. That's how good these two teams, like, it's just the familiarity, I think, with how much these two teams have played over the past 2 years. Denver has dominated the Lakers, but it's like every game is just so, in my opinion, that was the most entertaining game of the playoffs so far. That was probably the most entertaining game of the playoffs so far. And looking at it in that scope, it's like, LeBron gave you a good game. AD was dominating early. Had, I believe it was a stinger that happened that we were talking about it on post game, but that kind of took him out of his rhythm and flow. You got Austin Reeves getting hot down the stretch. You got actually a good game from D'Lo. Like Rui Hachimura, you got a good game out of him, and it just wasn't enough. With all that going right for the Lakers, it wasn't enough. That's kind of like the topic I want to discuss, because Denver really didn't play that great of a game. Took Nikola Jokic a while to get going offensively. They had a ton of turnovers that were really just not like the Denver Nuggets. Jamal Murray was questionable, like damn near up until tip-off because of his calf. I believe KCP was also questionable. He was banged up. They both ended up playing. Jamal Murray was out there like he wasn't even hurt at all. Being able to hit 2-game winners, we'll get into that later on. But kind of focusing on the Lakers, like, I guess I'll say this with, like, the West is getting better. The Minnesota Timberwolves are legit, and they are not going anywhere. They are a really young team that can keep that core together for years to come. OKC, how young they are, and their draft capital, they're not going anywhere. All this saying, barring any injuries. Then you got, like, Memphis Grizzlies, all that young talent. They're going to probably have a top 5 pick. They get that young core together, they're not going anywhere, barring injury. Like, there's so many teams in the West that are just ascending and getting better. And then don't let the Spurs have a good offseason, because they'll fuck around and be in the playoffs with Wemby. So all these teams are just getting better and better and better. And I want to say that because look at the Lakers season. LeBron missed some time for sure. The main question was Anthony Davis. That was the main question. Props to him for having the season he did. Had a monster year. Probably should have been more involved in the DPOY race. But looking at it in terms of the games played, he was really able to shoulder the load. This is the first year with Bron and AD where I looked at AD. He was the best player in the regular season. He was, throughout the regular season, the best guy on the team. It was his team. This is the first year I really looked at that with his defense and his offense, his impact that he's had this entire year, and his ability that he's been healthy this year, which has always been the question mark with Anthony Davis. Looking at that, it was really the first year where I looked at it, this is AD's team, even with Bron being Bron. But looking at it, you got that season from AD, and you still got an elite level year from LeBron with his age, and you still didn't finish. You finished as the 8th seed. You finished as the 8th seed. And you got in through the play-in. Like, You know what I'm saying? Like at what, and then Darvin Ham's probably gonna get fired as well. So like at what point, what can you do with this current group of guys that's gonna push you over the edge at some point? Bron's getting nothing but older. Even Anthony Davis is getting nothing but older. Like with this level of year from Anthony Davis, you would expect the Lakers to finish as a top 5 seed. But that's how good the Western Conference is. So at some point, the writing might be on the wall for the Lakers. It might be. Because, like I said, Denver's not going anywhere. OKC's not going anywhere. Minnesota's not going anywhere. 3 young teams that are ascending and getting better and have the ability to just get better. But with the Lakers, it's like, what avenue do you take to get better? D'Lo's contract's up in the air. Probably going to enter free agency. Like, who do you bring in to replace D'Lo? With kind of a weaker free agency class, like there isn't many avenues for this team other than bring in another star, but we see how that shit's going. The super team era is dead. It's done. It's over with. So, like, where does this team go? I think, personally, I've seen reports of LeBron probably going to test free agency, which he probably should, just see what's out there. Big chance he probably comes back to LA just because it's LA. But, like, it depends on what his motives are to end his career. Like, does he want to stay in LA because he's comfortable there, he's grown a home there and everything else, or does he want to go try to win another championship? Those two conversations are huge because it really can determine where he's going to go, because I think there's a lot of teams that are looking around and are gearing up with their draft capital, not to build a super team, but could look at some star movement around the league that I'll get into later. But his future with LA is up in the air. So it's a very interesting, for Lakers fans out there, it's going to be a very interesting offseason for your future. I think it's time to just kind of rip the Band-Aid off, kind of get as much value as you can, possibly in some kind of sign and trade or whatever LeBron decides to do. If LeBron leaves, you're entering a full rebuild. No ifs, ands, or buts about it, because unless you're doing a sign and trade, like, you're losing LeBron James for nothing in kind of a weaker free agency class. That's all I got to say. And if I'm looking at this, I'm like, if we're losing Bron, we might as well just try to cash in our chips on AD. You might as well try to cash in your chips on AD, because I don't think Anthony Davis in this point in time of his career is able to shoulder this LA team anywhere to success without a LeBron James even on the team, if that makes sense. So, like, you might as well hit the rebuild button. You might as well. If LeBron James leaves, you might as well trade AD as well. It's just two things that go hand in hand. It's like when you have with teams that like try to trade their one star to build around another, like with Trae Young and DeJounte Murray, you're probably better off just trading both of them and just hitting the reset. Same thing kind of goes with the Lakers. If you lose LeBron James, you might as well just hit the reset. Like, you might as well just get off AD and get as much assets in return as you can for AD to try to bolster up that draft capital for the future. But there's also a world where you get LeBron and AD come back, they try to reload in the offseason, they get a new coach, you know how this Lakers offseason shit goes. It's a revolving door. It happens every year or so. It's tough, but I think they need to really look at the future, and if LeBron James is going to hit free agency and he's going to really look to get to a new situation to try to win another championship before his career's over, Lakers are probably going to be gearing towards a rebuild, which I think is the right thing to do. Kind of talking about Denver a little bit. They're just that good. They're just that good. Towards down the stretch of games, they deliver. Every time. That two-man game with Jokic and Jamal Murray continuously wins them games. It's the most unstoppable two-man game in the league, and it's not close. It is not close. And it even when Mike Malone says something like in the postgame where we just gave them the ball, they know what to do, basically. And with how tough the Lakers played them, especially yesterday, defensively they got after it. Denver not having that good of a game, but they just did what they could to keep it close. Gave the ball to their best two players down the stretch, and it was over from there. But here's the thing I want to talk about more so. We know how good Denver is, but I think Jamal Murray's entering rare air. When I say rare air, I mean upper echelon of the league. Because I've never seen somebody consistently year in, year out raise their game in the playoffs. Like, he's had his moments in the past. You can go back to his series against Portland when they were super young and just really arriving on the scene when Portland still had Dame and CJ. Then they go to the bubble and he has his moments. They go to the conference finals. Him and Donovan Mitchell getting after in the first round. Them coming back from 3-1 against the Clippers. He had his moments against LA. So, bam, right? Then all of a sudden, you have the championship year where he is just absolutely elevating his game. Like, he's around probably like a 19 to 20 point a game score in the regular season. Like, it's like high 26. I think he's averaged 26 both back-to-back years, the championship year and the year before that. And he's averaging like 24 or something now throughout this playoffs. But it's just like the 2-game winners, the one in game 2 was just heartbreaking for the Lakers because that's a game that they thought they had secured and in the bag. Jamal Murray hitting the fadeaway over Anthony Davis to close that series out, that game out. And then to close the series out, hits a walk-off game winner again, with Austin Reeves having a phenomenal recovery to contest that shot. It's just, I think he's at least in the conversation as the best playoff performer in the league. With the way he's able to elevate his game and the moments that he has, he might be the best playoff performer in the league. He is at least in the conversation because Jamal Murray in the playoffs is a completely different player compared to the regular season. He elevates his game every single year consistently. You can look at the past 4 years they've been in the playoffs. Every single year, he has raised his game. And this is somebody who's not even an all-star. Not even an all-star. It's crazy to think about that. With how good Jamal Murray is in the playoffs, he's not even an all-star. He's in in my opinion, he's in the conversation for the best player performer in the league. He's in that conversation now. But going on to the next series we're going to talk about the Suns, right? If I told you that a team of Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, and Kevin Durant would get swept in the playoffs, you would call me crazy. Call me crazy. But it happened. Swept. Dominated in every game. Devin Booker had almost 50. Kevin Durant had 33. And I never for 1 second thought, man, the Suns might pull this one out. Never. Not 1 second in that game that I think, damn, Suns are going to pull this out. Like, more so focused on the Suns. I want to talk about kind of ownership, Matt Ishbia, because kind of a lot of just what I've seen on social media and Twitter and everything. He's kind of somebody who got the team and then kind of didn't know what he was doing with kind of the roster construction. Like, you can see it through the roster construction. I'm not going to say he doesn't know what he's doing because he's in the position he's in, but look just at this body of work. Look at what has happened. Look at the roster construction. You don't have a true point guard at all anywhere on the roster. Devin Booker can be a fine point guard throughout the stretches of games. For a whole season, that's a lot to put on Devin Booker, who's somebody who is a scorer, one of the best scorers in the league. No real point guard. No real rim protection whatsoever. I don't care what you say about Nurkic. He was he wasn't even able to play half the time against the Timberwolves. And that's a bigger team with actual bigs. So it's like, where is he going to find his way? I think in the regular season, he's fine because he can be a little bit of an offensive hub with his playmaking and his offense, but he brings you nothing defensively. So you have really no rim protection. You have no true power forward that wants to get dirty, like comparison to Aaron Gordon with the Denver Nuggets, for example. Like, they have no forward that's able to get dirty and be able to rebound the hell out of the basketball. So they don't have that. Their bench is lackluster. They lost Grayson Allen throughout this series, who's been better than Bradley Beal this entire year. I know Bradley Beal's been up and down with injuries, but he's been better than him this entire year. Grayson Allen had a phenomenal year. Worth that extension for sure. Because he actually fits next to Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. Because he can space. The bench is lackluster. You have nothing coming off the bench. You have too many guys who just do the same shit. Too many guys who do the same exact thing, that want to do the same exact thing. And the offense is terrible for 3 guys that you would see as offensive hubs. Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal. But the cohesiveness and the chemistry just isn't there. Like, it's just like when you look at this team, they don't really have like this fight. They just kind of, they're too cool. And like, if I'm them, what avenue do we have to getting better? You already want to fire Frank Vogel, which I don't even know if I agree with, because he has an incomplete ass roster. Yes, he has Durant, Booker, Beal. He basically didn't even have the 3 playing most of the season. So like, he has an incomplete roster already, on top of the fact that Bradley Beal was hurt most of the year. So like, looking at that, where do you go to get better? You have no draft capital. You have no real young assets to move. You have an untradeable contract in Bradley Beal, who's going to be making 50 M's plus the next 3 years. God forbid you can find a way to get off that contract. You have, obviously, your cornerstone piece of your franchise in Devin Booker, and I don't see him getting moved. Stephen A. came out and said something about him going to New York. That is just dumb. I think that's bullshit. Looking at Kevin Durant, like, he's your best trade asset to try to rejuvenate this team and try to bring Beal and Booker back and kind of reflux the roster, because you're paying $150 million with 3 guys with an incomplete team. A team that has no point guard, no real forwards, no depth at the forward position. Like, they just have so many holes to fill with no money or no capital to fill it. I think Matt Ishbia came into the season, we can get a star talent and it will probably just work. No, that's not how the NBA is moving. That's not how the NBA has really ever worked. Look at the past super teams. They haven't turned out and panned out, right? You need a full, complete roster to really compete in today's game. And then I just feel like, looking at it, I think they're using the excuse of, we're just going to change coaches and everything's going to be fine, and we're just going to run it back. No, why would you do that? You got swept with these 3 guys healthy the whole series. Dominated, swept. It wasn't close. I didn't think Phoenix was winning any of those games against the Wolves. Any of them. And we're just going to change coach and run it back? Why? Why would you even do that? There's nothing from this team that showed me that they can run it back and things will change. Nothing. There was nothing they did this entire series that made me think if they run it back, things will be different with a new coach. So looking at it from that angle, it's like, if I'm Kevin Durant, I'm asking out. Even with all the shit that he's had in his past. Why would I want to stay here if we're just going to run it back and there is no way for us to improve the team? If I'm the Suns, I'm looking at Kevin Durant, I'm like, with your age, I think we could still get a lot for you. And we can still continue to try to build around Booker, build around Beal as much as we can, unless you can somehow find a way to swindle a team and get off that 50 M's. Like, if I'm looking at the Suns, it might be time to look into trading a Kevin Durant. Because he is the only asset on that team, because I don't believe you're trading Devin Booker. He's still too young. Trading Kevin Durant can give you enough capital to kind of reshape the roster in a way that can possibly fit Devin Booker and Bradley Beal. He is their most valuable chip to trade because his age doesn't really fit with a Devin Booker, who is your guy still, I believe. So looking at that, I think it's time the Phoenix Suns go into this offseason. Who is interested in Kevin Durant? Because teams will call. Teams will call about Kevin Durant, but here's my thing. A kind of a way to flip it. Is Kevin Durant worth more trouble than he's worth? Phenomenal talent, phenomenal player. Y'all know how great Kevin Durant is, right? Does his value this is kind of the question I pose to you guys, is like, does his value kind of change because of his past? With what happened with Brooklyn and what's happened now, you saw 2 teams kind of give all their draft capital and all their assets away for not even a conference finals appearance with Kevin Durant. Teams are going to look at that. I think if teams would be stupid not to look at the past, even with how good of a player Kevin Durant is, even though his game is probably going to age like fine wine, and he's still probably going to go out here and average easily 25 points next season, even with his age. Teams are going to be stupid not to look at the two past teams that he's been with have not been to the conference finals since he's got there, and those two teams have got to the point where there is no way to get better once adding or trading for Kevin Durant. That's the question I pose to you. Is Kevin Durant's value, if he does hit the trade market, a little bit up and down because of the past? Who knows? That's kind of a question I kind of really thought of, is like, teams should look at the past and what's happened with his past two teams, because I think they'd be stupid not to. Kind of wrapping this up with Bradley Beal. I mean, I don't know what I watched in that game from Bradley Beal. From the comments beforehand, like, that was one of the worst games I've seen from like a player of his caliber in a do or die game at home. The turnovers, Anthony Edwards just did whatever he wanted when Bradley Beal was guarding him. Like, God, it was just a tough night for Bradley Beal, and he's paying him $50 million. I don't know what the Suns will do this offseason, man. I think there's nothing that shows to where you run this back, in my opinion. But kind of going on to the Timberwolves side of things, I mean, for the Timberwolves team that many people had a lot of questions about going into the playoffs because of their past, looking at what they've done in the past couple of times they've been in the playoffs, the Suns I don't think they're a complete team. But for a team that has Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, and Kevin Durant to dominate and sweep them, not even give them a game, that shows something. That shows something. The defense is legit. The defense is scary. Like, they have defenders everywhere that want to guard. It's a mindset. It's an energy. That's what defense is. It's the want to do it. This team wants to defend. They want to shut you down. And it's more so the mindset that this team has adapted. Because Anthony Edwards, kind of like I talked about Jamal Murray in a different light, Anthony Edwards is entering rare air. There's also one other player that I've seen in this playoffs also entering that alongside Anthony Edwards and Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray more so in the playoff light. Anthony Edwards has brought this, how do I describe it? This different vibe shift to the NBA. Like, you see Anthony Edwards come out and say comments, I want to run right through these guys, teams, players. He's a killer. He's not a hero. He's not like this guy who's buddy-buddy with everybody. He's a true killer. I feel like the league has kind of gotten to this point where the league has kind of been soft. I might sound like an old head, but when is the last time we've seen something like this from a young player coming up in the league? To where he don't give a fuck. He might say he idolizes and looks up to Kevin Durant, which he does. That don't mean he can take it any easier on him on the court. He took over that game yesterday. Like, no matter who was on him, didn't matter. The dunk over Durant and Beal, that was the emphasizing on the game. This game's over. Like, he took over the game offensively, defensively. It didn't matter. He has this energy and this vibe of this that the Wolves have kind of adapted to their identity as a team, where like, we are running through people. We don't care who you are. We're not scared of you. We're here and we deserve to be here. They have a full identity and they're really bringing this energy. Like, this is something that I feel like I haven't seen in the NBA for a long time. It's somebody who, like, not so much a villain in the way, but like somebody with the confidence to like really be like, I don't give a damn who you are. I'm coming after you. We're not doing the buddy shit. We can be friends off the court, but on the court, it's strictly on site. That's what the vibe is from Anthony Edwards, and I love to see that because I feel like we don't have that in the league anymore. I feel like in the league it's so too cool buddy shit. Anthony, killer. Not a lot of people have this mindset in the NBA, just from my perspective. from my perspective, I feel like Anthony Edwards is, in terms of like his mindset, not a lot of people have it. He has the mindset I wish somebody like Jason fucking Tatum had. Killer. Dog. Wants it. That's the kind of mindset I think I wish other stars had that don't. No discredit to them at all or anything like that, but his mindset is more so to the point where I would like to be like, damn, if Jason Tatum had this mindset, oh shit. Like, it's really crazy because I do think the league has kind of been a lot buddy-buddy, kind of gotten soft in a way in terms of mentality-wise. But something I want to compare this to that I think is very comparable to it is Ja Morant. I know Ja Morant has had his off-the-court issues. Memphis Grizzlies had a tough year dealing with injuries and everything else like that. But when they were going back and forth with the Warriors, that's the vibe I was getting from Ja Morant, is the vibe I'm getting from Anthony Edwards right now. Those are the same kind of vibes I'm getting. Because when I'm looking at that Ja Morant, all smoke. All of it. Don't care who you are, he coming after you. Same with Anthony Edwards. All the smoke is wanted. Like, I feel like those two players, being as young as they are, those are the two guys I could look at being the face of the league. The face of the league, because they're in the conversation for it. I know Ja Morant has had his off-court stuff and everything else like that. I think people are being too quick to forget about him, especially when you're like talking about the top point guards in the game. Let him be healthy. Memphis go get back to it. I have no doubts about Memphis being a good team next year. But looking at the mentality I feel like Anthony Edwards has kind of instilled in the Wolves and what they're kind of growing over there in Minnesota, scary. Scary. They got Denver next round going to that. Like, this has real Game 7 potential. They match up well. They got size. The defense is for real. They can score. The way Karl-Anthony Towns is hooping, he's playing with the most confidence I've seen him play. It's going to be a dogfight. I think it's going to be the best second round series next round. Like, this is... I have Denver in my predictions that I did moving on against the Wolves, but man, I'm not going to be shocked at all if the Wolves can find a way to beat Denver. Because I think out of the entire playoffs, the Wolves have the best makeup to beat Denver. They have multiple defenders that can switch. They have the size to deal with Jokic 2-7. Really, you can throw Cat, Rudy, Nasri could probably get some minutes on him. Just giving him multiple fresh bodies. Anthony Edwards is a killer down the stretch. I mean, this is a team that really probably played Denver the best last year in the first round due to their size. But I feel like Minnesota was just a year away last year. But this Minnesota team, tall task for Denver. I think this could be, if Denver wins and goes back-to-back, this is going to be the toughest series they play, even if they play Boston in the finals. I just think this is going to be a dogfight series. Game 7 potential written all over it. They split in the regular season. Like, man, I'm itching. Game 1's on Saturday, I believe. I'm itching for this series because this is going to be a phenomenal series. But moving on to kind of some other stuff that's happened. Pelicans also getting eliminated, getting swept by the Thunder. They were just missing Zion. I mean, when you're missing about damn near 30 a game, it's going to be hard to kind of replace. And Brandon Ingram kind of going into the playoffs banged up as well. They're another team where it's like, the future is like, what's the future looking like? Apparently there are reports that just came out today about the Pelicans, and I want to say it was the Jazz looking at their draft capital, kind of look to pivot to go get a star. I will also talk about kind of the stars that I believe could possibly be moving around the league. But it's the Pelicans, it's like every year it's kind of like either Brandon Ingram or Zion isn't healthy come playoff time. Zion hasn't even played in the playoffs yet. So it's like, it's unfortunate. It's not really on the team. It's just unfortunate circumstances. But looking at it to where it's like, what's the next pivot move for the Pelicans? I've seen discussions of choosing between B.I. or Zion. I don't know. I think they really do lack a real point guard, and that big spot is really in question. I like Valanciunas, but Valanciunas is to the point in his career where like he is just getting benched in the second half of games. And I think if they were able to use that draft capital to really go out and get a 5 that can better suit and better fit the team, kind of fit more of that timeline age-wise, and be able to fit them more, and getting a real point guard. See, like, I feel like CJ is comparable to, like, Devin Booker. They are combo 2 guards that are kind of forced into playing the point for their teams right now. They do a good job at it, but it's not their game. When I'm looking at what the Pelicans could use, they could use a floor general. Because they are still a very young team. They could use a floor general, a real point guard. For example, like somebody like Chris Paul or like a Tyus Jones, somebody that can control the pace of the game. Because they're another team that don't really have a real true point guard on their roster. They have a bunch of combo and tweeners on their team. A bunch of 2s and 3s and 1s. A lot of guys that play multiple positions, but they don't have that one solidified one spot figured out. And I think it's definitely something they need to go into the offseason to look about. I don't know if it's time. That's another question. Is it time to move on from B.I. and Zion? Pick one? Because this is a situation where you could pick one. With the Herb Jones and a Trey Murphy and a C.J. McCollum, they still have the makeup and the young talent on that roster with the draft capital to move off of one of them and be able to have enough to build a real thing around the other, especially with the return they can get for both of them, because they're still relatively young and they're still both very good young talents. So that's a question I pose to like you guys. Is it time to break up B.I. and Zion? I don't know. Next, looking at Kristaps Porzingis injury, now very comparable to, apparently he missed that, like he avoided the Achilles. Comparable to Giannis and the Durant injury. I feel like this is starting to be a common theme. Looking at it with how long Giannis has been out, with how the Kevin Durant thing, I think they're going to pay a real close attention to this. Boston's the type of team where they're probably going to take care of Miami just because Miami just doesn't have the talent, especially without Jimmy Butler. And then they're in a position where they could beat the Cavs or the Magic in my eyes in a series without him, with all the talent they have on that roster. But he's the X factor. He's the thing that makes this Boston team different from teams in past years, right? He is like the thing that could, if they matched up with the Knicks, that could really put them over the edge with his spacing and his shooting and his rim protection. But with him, who knows how long he's going to be out? Giannis has been out for a long time, longer than people think, with the calf, because they know in the back of their mind the calf can go to the Achilles like it did in the Kevin Durant situation. That's why they're paying so close attention to the Giannis situation. They play 2 different games, obviously, but it's still something that they will, I think, keep a close eye on, and they have the ability to just keep him out. They have the ability to just let him rest, let him get right. So I think they need to really let him rest and get right, but he's the X factor. Like I said, if he's not 100% ready to go, if they play the Knicks in the conference finals or a Pacers team, I know those series aren't over yet, but they're looking to be wrapped up. It could get interesting with how the Pacers are playing, especially with the Knicks and how they're playing and that defense and how they play over there. Could get interesting. It could get very interesting because he's that X factor. He's what makes them different from past Celtics teams, in my opinion, because they haven't had somebody like him. But hopefully he'll be fine. Hopefully we see him healthy, making a possible championship push, because injuries suck. But another thing is Clippers, Dallas. We saw a vintage James Harden game down the stretch. Paul George had a great game. I think they kind of need to... I've been seeing a lot of talk about like how they've been using Kawhi and if they brought him back too early. I think they need to keep him out the rest of the series. I think they do. Because if he's not going to be 100% ready to go, you might as well sit him. You might as well give James Harden, Paul George, Westbrook, Norman Powell the mindset of, all right, there's about all of Kawhi's usage in a sense. We need Harden to step up and score more. We need Norman Powell to have a game. We need Terrence Mann to have a game. Westbrook's more than capable of having a big game in this series, especially defensively. He might be off and on offensively, but defensively he's been fucking stout all year. He's been stout all year. Mainly talking about it, they had a great game without Kawhi in the lineup, but you should probably look to just rest him, because with what I'm seeing from James Harden, really, it's mainly James Harden. With what I'm seeing from him, and the series tied up 2-2 going back to LA, it could really go either way. Because that James Harden I've seen this series so far, that's vintage. I've saw vintage James Harden down the stretch. Maybe not the tween setback James Harden, but the ability to blow by, get to the cup, floater game, the assists, the playmaking, like vintage Harden is what we saw in Game 4. So looking at to Game 5, I'm sitting Kawhi. I'm giving free reins, and they have the depth and the scoring off the bench to really be fine without a Kawhi Leonard. Because Norman Powell, somebody that can get you 20. Westbrook, somebody that can get you 10 to 15 with 8 assists and 9 rebounds. Like, they have other scoring options on the team to where I feel comfortable if you let Kawhi go get healthy, especially with the series tied up 2-2. Going back home, I think you should rest and make sure he is healthy for a possible Game 7, or if you guys get out of this series, to possibly play him later down the playoffs. So looking at that, and another thing is, like, watching that Game 4, I can't tell what Jason Kidd does sometimes. Like, some of the decision-making I see from Jason Kidd, like, during down the stretch of that game, Harden was just doing whatever he wanted to P.J. Washington. Whoever was on him, he would get by P.J. Washington. Listen, the blow-by and then the stop and go from James Harden, the slight hesitation and the bump to just get and put P.J. Washington in jail for the floater game. He did it so easy. It was so fluid. A lot of those finishes are a lot harder than he made him look, but the stop and go that he was doing to P.J. Washington was just cooking. He did whatever he wanted. But here's my thing. You go out and get somebody in a Daniel Gafford who can be a rim protector, and a Derek Lively in the draft who can be a rim protector, and you see James Harden just consistently just getting to the basket at will, and you don't put any of your bigs in. Why are we playing small? Why are we playing small? I feel like with what they were able to do, they were coming back down from fucking 30. Kyrie, historic game. Like, and you see, as soon as I see James Harden get 2 floaters in, one of my bigs is going in the game, checking in. One of them is going in, checking in. I just don't understand why down the stretch, neither one of your bigs are in, when the Clippers were just getting to the cup at will. It's an interesting series, man. I would like to see either team win. Honestly, I feel like there's a lot of pressure on both teams to kind of win this series. But it's interesting. Tied up 2-2 going back to the LA, man. Tied up 2-2 back to LA. Jason Kidd, I feel like, had some mistakes down the stretch of that game. I also feel like Dallas kind of ran out of gas coming back and getting themselves back into the game. But I feel like Derek Lively or Daniel Gafford could have really at least challenged some of those shots at the rim that James Harden was just getting so easily. But I don't know. That's just from my perspective of how I looked at it. I feel like one of them should have at least been in the game, especially with how easy James Harden was getting to the rim. Looking ahead to tonight's game, so recording this will probably be out tomorrow. We have Pacers Bucks. Pacers up 3-1. 76ers Knicks up 3-1. Cavs and Magic tied at 2-2. Kind of dive in talking about these series a little bit. What I expect to happen. I think Pacers wrap this thing up tonight in Milwaukee. No Dame, no Giannis. I just think it's over. Really. I think with both of them, and Milwaukee's in a prime spot to run it back. They're not like the Suns, and they're not like I guess the Suns are really Suns and the Lakers in a sense where they can just run it back, because the Bucks still have needed an off season, I feel like, to really fit the pieces right around Dame and Giannis. I think this roster definitely needs to get a lot younger, more athletic. I feel like just because their championship core has kind of fizzled out and got older, I think you still get good production from Brook Lopez, but it's hit or miss now. It's not as consistent. I think Chris Middleton has just done with injuries and had a historic game that they ended up losing in OT. But I think Chris Middleton is just dealing with a ton of injury things throughout the years since the championship. Like, they're in a prime spot to just run it back. Especially, I think you give this team a full offseason to really get the right fitting pieces around Dame and Giannis, I think they can figure out a way to kind of get some other guys in here that better fit. They're in a prime run back spot because if they do lose, you didn't have Giannis, you didn't have Dame. Like, you lost to the Pacers, which is going to be tough because I feel like that's a little rivalry that's been growing throughout the year. But they're in a good run back spot. I'm not losing my mind like I would be for the Lakers or the Suns, like it would be for Milwaukee. I feel like they're just in a different spot as a team right now to where I would be fine if they ran it back, because I feel like if they were to run it back, if they had Giannis and Dame, they win this series easily, in my opinion. And I think them against the Knicks would be fire. But, like, looking at it, they're in a good run back spot. They could really kind of revamp this roster in a way they think could best fit for them to make a championship push. I know Dame's getting up there in age, but I feel like they're in a prime spot to where if they ran it back, they have potential. I see the light that they could have rather than the Suns where they haven't shown me anything. The Bucks have had an up and down year, but they're more so to the injuries. I can see them running it back and being just fine next year and being kind of in the same position in top of the Eastern Conference, ready to make a deep playoff push. For the Pacers, playing with kind of house money. I mean, you beat the Bucks. I mean, you have a tough. I mean, if it all goes right and the Knicks and Pacers take care of business, I mean, that's a tough matchup for the Pacers next round. But getting into 76ers and Knicks, I mean, this is the other player when I talk about rare air. When I talk about being one of the faces in the league and being in a big market like New York, I mean, Jalen Brunson, like, he's getting closer to top 5 than top 10. People want to talk about the top 10. He's getting into that top 5, in my opinion. With what he's able to do at his size, I've already pled my case about Jalen Brunson in past episodes, but he's entering rare air to where, like, he's getting to the point where I can see Jalen Brunson being one of the faces of the NBA. So looking at it, 76ers are another team where they're in run-back territory. This is the same thing. I understand Joel Embiid's dealing with injuries. I applaud him for being able to fight through it and stick through it. Joel Embiid's dealing with injuries all year, basically. They're in a prime run-back spot. You could just run it back, bring back damn near the same team. You get off Tobias Harris, who's been pleading to get off that team for years now from the fans. You have the ability to have cap space for you to add another star talent, which is, I think, what this team needs. Maybe not like gutting that team for like a superstar player, but they have, with that cap space, the ability to go get somebody and keep that what they have intact. So looking at it from that perspective, with what I see from the Sixers, and my mindset is Joel Embiid gets gassed, and I've seen this in previous years. Obviously, he's dealt with injuries, but like during that fourth quarter, I feel like he just gets so gassed to the point where he just makes dumb mistakes, like trying to draw a foul on a wide open mid-range, like shit like that. And then when teams realize that Joel Embiid has kind of doesn't really have it going in the fourth, all the pressure goes to Maxey to make a play. They don't have anybody else on the roster where you're like, we can give them the ball, they can go create offense. Kyle Lowry's past that point in his career for sure, even though I think Kyle Lowry still provides you great things. Like, with this cap space, and it's supposed to be Tobias Harris. He's supposed to be your third. Obviously, that's not the case. So looking at it with their cap space, they need to really go out and invest in somebody. What do we need? We need somebody else that can really create on their own. Because there's times in this game for Philadelphia to where like it's all Maxey. If Joel Embiid doesn't have it going, and with how great the Knicks are defensively and how physical they are, Maxey still has good games, but it's just like it's so much pressure on Maxey late game, especially when you see Joel Embiid is gas and doesn't have it going in the fourth. So it's like they need to go get somebody that can create on their own. With that cap space, they really need to address that need, because they can address that need and keep all the surrounding pieces of a Kelly Oubre, D'Anthony Melton, and Nick Batum. Like, they can keep the core foundation, a Buddy Hield. Like, you can keep the core foundation and run it back next year and just hope Joel Embiid stays healthy. And if you add this is the only case where I can see them adding not a superstar level talent, but an all-star level talent. Because with what they have, and you see Joel Embiid you can really load manage in a way Joel Embiid to make sure he's healthy. And if he does get hurt, you can be fine and not slip like they did this year into the plan. If you have Maxey and somebody else with all the things that they do have already. So they're in a good spot to run it back. Just a tough year again for the 76ers. I mean, this is probably the most unlucky fan base I've seen, just with the injuries, and I feel like every time it looks like it might be Philadelphia's time, it's always something. It's always something. It's just, I feel for 76ers fans. I really do. Because every year, continuously, it's just bad luck, man. It's just that simple as that. It's just bad luck. Last series that's also playing tonight, Cavs Magic tied up 2-2. Cavs are in dangerous territory. Magic are playing with confidence. They are a young team. They are bullying this Cavs team around, just like we saw last year with the Knicks. Darius Garland, where you been? Evan Mobley's been a non-factor, especially offensively. D. Mitch is due for a big game at home tonight, but it's like, if they lose tonight, it's over with, in my opinion. They lose tonight, they ain't going back to Orlando and getting that game 6. Orlando finna get it done in 6. Huge do-or-die game for the Cavs tonight. With the confidence that Orlando's playing with, it's a do-or-die game. With the way they defend, they have this mindset now, like, they're confident they can beat the Cavs. They are more than confident. I mean, this is a do-or-die game tonight. Obviously, the result will be out by the time this video is out tomorrow, but D. Mitch is due for a big game. Wouldn't be surprised if he came out and really pushed the motor, got it going early. But, man, if they lose tonight, I don't see them winning in Orlando in Game 6. I mean, they're in blow-up territory. Like, if they have back-to-back first-round exits, this team is looking completely different next year. Completely different next year. You got to start to wonder, are you choosing between Garland and Mitchell? That's the thing. I think that's a conversation that is going to be had regardless of if they win the series or not. I think they're going to have to make that decision, choosing between D. Mitch and Garland if that fit works, if it actually works, especially come playoff time, because they've been a good regular season team, but in the playoffs, they still haven't had that jump from Evan Mobley, even in throughout the regular season as well, that you would hope to expect. Jared Allen's been phenomenal this series. Wasn't last year. But, Evan Mobley and Darius Garland, with the lack of spacing they do have, it's just like you're waiting for them to have that game. They haven't had that game yet. Could be tonight because this Cavs team is due for a big game. But with this Orlando Magic defense and the confidence they have right now, they're giving the Cavs hell. And now that they've got 2 wins on them and their confidence is rolling, it might just be all but done for the Cavs, especially if they don't get this one tonight. But D-Mitch is due for a big game. We'll see what happens. More so talking, kind of wanted to wrap this up about the star movement, I've been touching on a little bit throughout this episode. It's kind of a weaker free agency class. You could have LeBron in there depending on how that situation goes. But, the star movement with, Team USA being a thing, there's a lot of players on that team that are in situations that are similar to one another, to where they are looking to kind of add more talent to a team or kind of trying to get out of that situation they're currently in. Could be interesting because I feel like Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Steph Curry, LeBron James, Paul George, who hasn't signed the extension yet, who's not on Team USA, but Paul George is a name who's if they get bounced first round, what does it look like for him? I personally think he wants to stay in LA, but who knows what could happen in that situation. There's a lot of stars that could possibly be on the move, and there's a lot of teams that are kind of seeing what they have. If you're a team like San Antonio, you already see how good Vic is. Why wait? I've already expressed my opinion about that, and they shouldn't be waiting at all. They should go into this offseason hungry and aggressive. They see how good Vic is right now. They had a trash-ass team around him this year, but that was just a rookie year. Why not go get talent right now when we have the cap space, while he's on a cheap contract? Why not go get it done right now? with all the stars that could possibly be on the market, why not get it done? I've already talked about the Pelicans and their draft capital situation. They could go hunting to improve their roster. I'm not saying superstar talent, but like a team like the Spurs, they need somebody else next to Wemby for sure. But like the Pelicans, they have capital to go make a splash. Like you got even like guys like DeMar DeRozan, who's a free agent, who I feel like could go fit and be another shot creator in other places that need it desperately. Like Zach LaVine is still a name. Even he has a big contract. He's a name that I think is going to be on a different team next year. So all the star movement, I know Team USA mainly because I feel like this is a time where a lot of recruiting goes on at Team USA, especially for the season prior, especially with how the contracts match up and everything else like that. I've seen it work in the past, but like I feel like this is an offseason where there's a lot of movement, a ton of movement that could happen. There's a lot of teams like a Houston Rockets, like a San Antonio that have kind of this infrastructure. San Antonio has Wemby. Houston has built an infrastructure that you could really see plugging this or that player into it. Like what do the Nets do? They have 4 guys on their roster that they could go be plugged into championship teams. Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Nicholas Claxton. Like, they got talent over there that could be on the move. Like, what are they doing? Like, there's a lot of movement that's going to happen this offseason. I think we're gearing up. It's just what I've seen from this first round alone. I think we're gearing up from a very entertaining offseason. Just from what I'm seeing. But that's kind of pretty much touched on everything. Probably be back with another episode later this week, especially depending on how Bucks, Pacers, 76ers, Cavs, Magic all end up. Also Clippers and Mavs, see how that ends up. So we'll probably have another upload later on in the week, but make sure to stay locked in for Thursday. We're going to have a draft recap episode for the NFL content fans going out like that. That's going to be on Thursday. Probably have another Let's Talk About It later down this week. But thank you guys for tuning in to the Barrel Talk podcast. Hope you see you tune in to future episodes.